we go, and we're recording. Yeah, I always feel like if I can just, if we have, why can't I talk? It's early. That some of the best chats are always when we literally just chat and go. And I've had where I haven't pressed record before, and I've been like talking about their day or my day or whatever, and I've been like, oh my god, wait, stop.
No, I definitely agree.
So you were saying that you've had lots of clients and stuff. What clients are these?
So I work with mostly HA recovery clients, but also ED and disordered eating recovery clients, and working on them in obviously healing themselves physically to get their period back, but also healing them in terms of, changing the way that they think about their body, that they relate to food, that they relate to exercise, so that they can kind of reach that full kind of like psychological turnaround, so that they are recovered for good and not just recovered enough to get their period back, only to head back down that road again.
Yeah, I love that. And I bet everyone listening, obviously everyone watching can see you, but everyone listening is probably like, oh my god, this sounds amazing, who is it? Could you do a quick introduction, please, Lucy?
My name is Lucy. I am a dietetics student, so soon to be dietitian. I'm also a health coach and a personal trainer, and I work alongside another lady who you may have already heard of, named Sarah Liz King. And I work with her to help women recover from HA, EDs, and disordered eating. So my passion for this area comes from my own personal experience with HA and my own recovery story. And after recovering from that, not once, but twice, I decided that I wanted to help other women in the same boat, to help them to really recover their period and get their health back.
Ah, I love that. It's literally like singing from the same hymn sheet. Is that the saying? I hope that's the saying. Yeah, I just totally resonate with everything you just said. I feel like there's such, actually I love on your Instagram bio that you say like using my message, something like that.
Yeah, using the message. I think that people relate to you a lot more when they know that you've walked in their shoes before.
100%, yeah, definitely. So what is your story with HA?
Okay, I guess for me, like a lot of people in the same boat, my kind of journey into HA started very, very innocently, just as an attempt to live healthier and to lose some weight. So it kind of happened in the years after I graduated from high school, and I was in my early 20s, and I thought, right, I need to lose weight so that I look better and that I'm healthier. So it started off as kind of going to the gym and doing those kind of aerobic classes, adopting a calorie counting diet kind of situation. And from there, it slowly spiraled. From there, I started to pick up on Instagram fitness culture, which was all about tracking your macros and lifting weights and bikini competitions and bulking and cutting. And I got really, really tied up in this, and eventually reached a point where I was at a very, very low body weight. At this time, by the time I kind of reached that point where I was at my absolute lowest and I was really in the thick of it, I was also living in Spain.
Okay.
By myself. So in a previous university degree, I was doing international studies, and as part of that, they were like, you get to go to the country of the language that you're doing for 1 year and study there. So I was doing Spanish. So I was like, sweet, I was in Spain. So I was by myself. And as we know, eating disorders thrive in isolation and in those times when you are by yourself and you have control of every single aspect of your life. And that's where mine really, really started to thrive. All of this time that I'd been on the contraceptive pill. So I was just happily, completely unaware of what was going on with my hormonal health. So whilst I was over there in Spain, I then came off the contraceptive pill because I started to get wrapped up in this YouTube culture of healthy living and healthy well-being, where a lot of these people were saying that you needed to come off a contraceptive pill. So rather than listening to the advice of a qualified medical professional, I listened to all the YouTubers out there and thought, I'll just take myself off the contraceptive pill, which in hindsight was a good thing because it then revealed the fact that I did not have a menstrual cycle at all. So this is several years ago. It would have been 2017. So I'm coming off the contraceptive pill here. I'm super, super lean. I'm super, super wrapped up in fitness culture. No period. Not unsurprisingly. So it took me kind of 6 months to do anything about it. I was in Spain and I was like, I'll just give it time. It'll come back. Like, it'll be fine. Fine. It got to the end of the year. I flew back home to Sydney. Still nothing. And then I'm researching on the internet. What can I do? What can I do? I'm trying everything else. I'm trying going to see a naturopath. I'm trying to go and do essential oils. I'm trying everything else, seed cycling, all of the other things.
Why did you want it? Sorry, just quickly, why did you want it back?
Why did I want it back?
Yeah.
Because I knew that I needed it. Because
right. Okay.
I
you were still quite aware.
I was aware. Yeah. So I knew that it was not important for me. And I think that I knew that I needed to have a period because I always remembered in high school, there was always this real kind of thing that we used to be so aware of, and people used to be like, oh, like she has, you know, when people talked about other girls who were my other peers in high school who may have struggled with eating disorders or disordered eating, the thing that everyone used to say was like, oh, she's not got her period, which was one of the symptoms that people used to talk about, and being like, it was almost like the way that the girls at school measured the severity of someone's illness, which was interesting that we knew that in high school, and I'm surprised that we knew that.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because I would have absolutely no idea in school. Like, that one of the big things I talk about is the fact that I was like 22, 23 when I started to like become aware of the importance of it. Like, and I don't know if it's maybe like how much more like the education system or whatever it differs, but like, yeah, absolutely no idea. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if we learnt it as part of like our PDHP curriculum or something like that. We must have, because I do remember talking about it often with my girlfriends at school, and it would be like the criterion, you know, by which we kind of evaluated someone else's, which is horrible, you know, but it was in my head and I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it was a thing. So that was kind of what was fueling that desire to get more information. After I kind of tried all of these other methods and stuff to try and get my period back
Like
without
acupuncture. I know you said naturopath, but like acupuncture, like God, I can totally relate. I'd be like, oh, I need to get my period back, so I'm going to acupuncture. Yeah, I'm still eating like barely anything.
so like everything possible that was not eating more and moving less. And then I kind of, you know, somewhere along that road, I discovered the book No Period Now What. I read it all cover to cover, and you know, when you read that book and you're like, this is like,
yeah, you don't need
the option.
you don't need a diagnosis once you've read that book, I don't think. Obviously it's really important that you do and still have your tests done and everything to double check that it's not anything else, but yeah, when I came across that book I thought, oh shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like the hard part for me was that I had received tests and they'd all come back and my doctor had said that it was normal. So that was kind of why I was resisting like doing anything about it, because my doctor was like, oh, like we're normal, like it's fine, like it'll just come back eventually.
Were your kidneys and everything fine?
Yeah, so I didn't really have any other real markers that were alarming to my doctor. To be honest with you, I could probably go look back at that initial test and probably find stuff now that I know more about what I should be looking for. Because obviously, like one thing that we find with our work is that when doctors look at blood tests, they're just quite often looking at things through the lens of normal population norms rather than through the lens of eating disorder pathology. And we need to look at things a little bit differently. And once you start looking at it through that lens, you start to pick up on things that are not that are indicative of, you know, other deeper underlying issues. So I mean, I don't think I've got those tests anymore. If I went back, I may find stuff, but
yeah, 100%. I was exactly the same. So my doctor said I was absolutely fine. Apart from the only time my actual family started to take me seriously that I needed to eat more and I should, like, this was actually a problem, was when they came back and said, oh, your kidney function's a little bit low. And that's when my mum was like, okay, we've got to do something about this. But similar to you, it was actually when you look back at the test. So I sent my test to Rena McGregor and she looked at them and she was like, no, you've got no estrogen. And I was like, oh, well, whereas the doctor was obviously saying it's normal based on like potential differences in my cycle and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not even having a period. You can't use that.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry. So, yeah.
No, I don't remember where I was up to. Yeah, so I was kind of in this phase of trying everything, and then obviously egged on by the fact that my doctor wasn't helping by was not giving me any kind of diagnosis. But yeah, once you read the book and you kind of like, well, here we go, this is my only option. And this was 2018. So I'd returned from Spain. I was kind of 22 years old, so I was quite young, and I was like, I need to go all in.
How weird that we must have been reading the book and going through this at exactly the same time.
Here you go. It's so common. That's the scary thing. Like everyone. Yeah, I went all in. I started off as kind of half in.
Yeah.
I was quite actually lose the exercise first. It was the food for me that was the hard jump to make. So I did the whole, I'm going to do yoga and I'm just going to do walking, which was still probably too much. In terms of like how much I was applying myself to this yoga class. And it took me probably 2.5 to 3 months of doing that before I kind of was like, all right, come on, the food's got to happen too. We've got to do something about the food. And once I made that decision in my mind, it's almost like I flicked a switch. The next day I woke up, I remember the day so vividly because I drove to my dad's house. My parents said, well, my dad lives a couple of hours away. I drove to my dad's house and I was kind of like, Dad, this is what I'm doing. I'm quite open with my parents. And so that night we were like, sushi train. Like just everything from then on, it was like, how can I get as much energy into my body as possible? From that day, 5 weeks later, bang on, I got my period back.
Wow.
Super quick. Like as soon as I committed to like the food side of things, it happened quickly. Yeah.
And do you think that it happened? So when I was talking to Rini, she was saying that it's probably because mine was 4 months, but I was still training quite heavily, and I actually did like a challenge during it, but that was a whole different story. That was like a running thing. It was like 100k in May, just after I had like really committed to recovery. So I'm sure that if I'd actually cut that out, but Rini was saying that she was happy for me to do a little bit more exercise, but the reason why I got it back so quickly was because actually like being half in isn't not worthwhile. Like if all you can do right now is half in, that's better than not in at all. Like obviously we want you to be all in and give it your all to get you back healthier quicker, but like she was very understanding about like, look, your half in hasn't been a waste of time, it's just taken your body longer.
Absolutely. And like I'll kind of tell you about my second round of recovery, which was much. But when I'm working with clients, I always like to kind of describe the recovery spectrum. So at the very, very most extreme end of the spectrum is like fully all in, zero movement, sitting on the couch all day, eating like 3,000 plus calories, just fully chilling out. And then at the other end of the spectrum is all of your previous behaviors.
Yeah.
You're going to need to be somewhere on that spectrum. You may do it in a stepwise fashion, stepping your way up the spectrum until you get your period back. You may just be like, screw it, and just go all the way up to the top, which is kind of what I did the first time. But everyone's going to be sitting somewhere along that broad spectrum. And it's going to be like the requirements for you is going to be completely different based on where you're at, how your body is, how tolerant your body is to certain stresses. So yeah, there's no one answer. And that's why, for you and your experience, it's kind of sitting a little bit kind of further down that spectrum. It was still fine for you and it still worked well for you, which is kind of like reassuring to know that it's not a one size fits all treatment approach for everyone who has HA.
And that's why when I do my Q&As on Instagram, like I obviously always say like, go get your bloods checked, go work with a professional, because you don't know that like when people say, can I still work out and stuff? It's like, well, you might be able to like, and that's a great sign. Whereas I know that this is where obviously like opinions are conflicted based on other opinions and stuff. Like the book tells us to do nothing, which obviously works, of course, but some people might, like athletes, for example, might not necessarily be in that position. And it's like, don't stress about it. That's the least, like we want to reduce our stress. Yeah,
no, definitely.
Okay, so you in time.
So yeah, I got my period back, and then I kind of like stayed on the all-in train a little bit. I mean, this is so fuzzy in my head, but yeah, I did stay on the all-in train a little bit and got a couple more. But then shortly after that, my discomfort in my body was so extreme because when I first went all in, I was like all in on the physical things. I was all in on the nutrition. I was all in on the exercise. I was committed to those behavioral changes. I did nothing to address my psychological health at that time. So I did nothing to kind of combat those mindsets and beliefs and thought patterns that were underpinning all of my restrictive behaviors and disordered eating behaviors that had led me to this situation in the first place. So naturally, when I gained weight and stopped all of this and changed all my habits, I just reached this place of like, I don't know who I am anymore. This is really, really uncomfortable for me. And I don't like this and I can't tolerate this anymore. And I was in this weird temporary mindset of, I know I can handle this if I get my period back, but as soon as I get it back, then that's good. I've ticked the box and I can get back onto my old ways and my old mindsets around food and exercise. So it was like 2 to 3 periods. And then I was like, all right, booked in a photo shoot for like 3 months after, and was like, this is going to be my target date and I'm going to get myself back.
Yeah. But were you still like, you were like, I've got my period back now, so now I can do this sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think really in the back of my head, I kind of knew that I was being an idiot and that I was heading back down the route. But at the time, for me, what was important to me, like, because I hadn't dealt with all that, done all the psychological work, I just couldn't deal with the thought of not, getting back to that place where I was psychologically comfortable in a very small body. So yeah, I just went back onto my, I got that period, and then I was like, I'll just reactivate my gym membership and download my fitness pal again and let's just go. And so kind of lost all the weight again. I had that photo shoot in December. The last period that I had was on the 26th of January that following year, so 1 month later, and then that was it again.
Yeah, I relate weirdly, and it's only been since I ended things with him.
Yep.
Bit awkward. But I'm going through sort of like emotional release therapy at the moment. Based off like past relationships, because I actually noticed a big trigger for me was that I was healing, met like a lovely guy, and he still is. I've got no bad word to say about him. He's a great guy. And got my period back. But then because I hadn't dealt with like past emotions on like how I viewed myself fully, so like I had spent lockdown alone, and I do believe that's why I got my period back, and I believe that's why I manifested him in a way. But because then I was caught up in that whole, oh my god, I actually really like this guy, I hope I don't lose him. And my previous patterns would be to stay a certain size so they stayed interested in me. So I started going like working out quite a bit. He didn't eat loads. This sounds really weird. So I would match his eating habits, or I would be seen, I thought it was cute as a girl to be seen to be eating less. And I need to say, like, this is by no means his doing at all. This was all in my head. And that's what then I knew what I was doing. I knew those habits had come back in, but I was very, very clever at hiding them, because I wasn't going to the gym 6 days a week, but I was just having like an apple and a little tiny bit of yogurt for breakfast. And he would say like, is that all you're having? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's because it's hot. Do you know what I mean? All cute, go eat less sort of thing. And then my period didn't actually, I ended up losing my period again as well.
Yeah. It's just, you don't realize how important the psychological work is. Right. And that's like the thing that like people so often get caught up on. And when I'm working with clients and I'm like doing this real psychological push, especially in those initial phases, that can be one of the biggest barriers. It can be one of the biggest things that people like, put their hands up in the air and they're like, oh, no, too hard, feels too hard. Like, I can't deal with this. But it's crucial to long-term successful recovery that you actually do the work on dealing with like, the pattern. Yeah.
like I keep asking those questions of like, okay, you thought this, why did you think that? What was the emotion behind that? Where do you think that stemmed from? That sort of thing. And I think questions are what makes people uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, definitely. People don't want to dive that deep. They're not, it's one of the most challenging things to do. Yeah, so where was I? Lost it again.
Yeah, we lost it again from the photo shoot.
Exactly. So this was early. So 2018 was the first big recovery year. So 2019, January 2019, that was it again. I went through the entire duration of 2019 without doing anything about it.
Me too.
Because there you go. I think I was just in this mental state where I was like, I can't deal with it, because I was in this space of thinking I'm just going to have to go all in again. And I knew how hard that was the first time. I can't do that again. I was not ready. I was nowhere near, ready to do that.
I totally relate. I had so I had one period after like a summer of, must have been 2018 then, summer, maybe, can't really remember.
Right.
One, yeah, they all sort of merged together, of like partying and eating what I want and chilling out and just having a really good time. And I got one period in September.
Yeah.
But I hated how I looked, so that freaked me out. So then I went, and then I met a guy that I was like, right, you've got to stay a certain size for him. And and so then I spent the whole 2019 like, completely
ignoring the problem.
Yeah,
definitely. And then I think throughout 2019 I was still aware of the issue, and that was actually when it was right at the end of 2019 when I actually stumbled across Sarah Liz King on Instagram, and so I was following her, and I was just kind of like, she was just in the corner of my mind. And then 2020, it was a new year, and I just kind of woke up and was like, I need to deal with this situation. My boyfriend, who I've been with for 6 years now, so he's lived through it all with me. He was kind of that little voice of reason in the back of my mind, just reminding me that this wasn't something that was important for my long-term health, and also because of those antisocial behaviors that I was displaying, like avoiding social events, other kind of things that were affecting our relationship, like my high anxiety around food, low libido, all of those things. They were starting to become really disruptive. Not that he was like, I'm going to leave you if you don't sort this out, but he was like, do you really want your life to look like this? And he was a really good, rational voice in my mind. And I knew he was right. So first kind of few weeks of 2020, that was when I reached out to Sarah, and I started working with her, I think in February. And the way that we addressed recovery through working with her was a much more slow and steady stepped approach in comparison to what I'd done when I'd gone all in and just flicked that switch overnight and gone sushi trainer. So it was a matter of slowly building up my nutritional intake, and then slowly stepping back my exercise. So that was kind of the behavioral changes. And then throughout that, addressing all of those psychological fears that came up as I did that, so that I was able to manage the behavioral changes better, which was so helpful. And so Sarah always does her coaching in 12-week sessions, and it was 3 days before my 12th session that I got my period back again. So it took longer. It took about 3 months, rather than the speedy 5 weeks the first time. But I did the work psychologically, so that ever since then I have had a regular period from then onwards, and I didn't lose it again. So a super different approach. My nutrition ended up at the point of being similar to the all-in level, but I didn't flick it overnight and go straight up to there. I slowly built up so that psychologically I was able to handle that. My exercise, I still exercise throughout, but it was just a lot lower intensity than what I usually train at. We were also in lockdown here in Australia, so the gyms were closed. So I was at home in my garage. I had a little bit of gym equipment, but that probably also helped me a lot. And then also like the lowered stress levels of being locked down. Like I feel like the whole world went on pause last year, and I was able to put my life a little bit on pause as well in terms of my stress. So that was probably another really helpful thing for me, personally, in just kind of working through those things.
Yeah, I was literally, your story sounds more or less exactly the same. I was exactly the same. So I started working with Rini last year. And it then sort of like the lockdown really helped, because I was living alone. I was able to deal with the emotions that rose. I was able to deal with the changes in my body alone. I was do you know what I mean? I was a lot less stressed. I could only work out here, and I've never been one to really enjoy working out at home anyway. So it was quite good. I was just sort of walking and stuff like that. So yeah, I can totally relate. So how, because you're now working with Sarah as part of the recovery club, how did that all come about?
So at the end of last year, so at the end of 2020, she was advertising for an intern to help her out, because obviously, as we know, HA is becoming something that is much, much, much more talked about. And so when it's being talked about, there's a lot more demand for these kind of services to help people get better. Because of my career choice, which is to become a dietitian, so I am coming up to I'm actually halfway now. It's a 5-year degree. I'm now 2.5 years through, so I've got 2.5 years to go. It's a long haul, but I'll get there eventually. But she was aware of the fact, because she worked with me, that I wanted to use my degree to work in this field. So I kind of reached out to her and I was like, hi, what's this intern job? And she was like, I actually have other thoughts for you. So we kind of started talking a little bit, and then early this year she brought me on board, and she's been my mentor and has helped to train me up so that I am able to work with clients and to also be the other half of Recovery Club. So me and her, we run that together, and we kind of work together to run all of the services that she offers, which has been a huge learning curve for me and a really, really great way for me to use my passion for this area. And to really start working in the field whilst I am getting the qualification that I need and learning more at uni. I can put what I'm learning to use with clients, and start kind of building that dream career that I've wanted.
Oh, I think that's amazing. And also, like, I think there's so much power in your story. Like, often, like, people get so worried about telling their story, whereas like I've spoken to dietitians before, and they're like, it's cool, like your experience is also your expertise as well. And I think people can really, like, even today, right, just talking today, like I didn't realize how similar, I know a lot of people's story in HA is really similar, but like I had no idea how similar our stories were. So I 100% know if I was going through this still and I heard this and your story, I would be like, oh my God, like she's recovered. So this is amazing. And then obviously backed up with the qualifications and whatever. So this is obviously your sort of like dream and things like that. What do you have any advice for anyone going into like in recovery? What would you say, sort of like, do you have any like top advice that you would give someone that's going through it and just wants their life back?
Yeah, a couple of things. So the first thing, I like to look at the differences between my 2 recovery journeys, the first and the second one. The big difference is the first one I went alone, and the second one I did it under the support of someone who knew what they were talking about and who was able to support me psychologically. So reaching out for support. There are plenty of people out there who offer support. I know personally myself and Sarah, we offer multiple levels of support. So if you're at a place where you can't afford to do the one-on-one support, we've got our group programs, we've got Recovery Club, we've got all sorts of resources that can help you so that you're not going alone. The other thing that I think is an important headspace or mindset shift to make is that I think the big difference between my 2 recovery journeys was the first time around, I was in this headspace of, I want to recover from HA. That's it. Just HA. I just want to get my period back. The second time around, because of all those kind of things that my boyfriend was saying, like your quality of life isn't good, your social life isn't good. My second time around, I wanted to recover from my disordered eating, my eating disorder. And by doing that, I was able to recover from HA. So there was such a different mindset going into it. My second one was like, this is recovering my life back, not just my period back. So creating that shift and recognizing that HA is usually just a small part of a very big picture. And if you're only focusing on that tiny little detail, you're missing so much more that needs to be addressed and needs to be dealt with. So zooming out and looking and just observing, HA is rarely just occurs just out of nowhere. it's usually occurs in conjunction with some sort of behavioral problem around food and exercise. And sometimes you can't see that initially, but when you zoom out and really reflect on it, you can start to see that and start to see where you need to target in your recovery to start to get things happening again.
Definitely, yeah. So around like self-worth or control or fear, that sort of thing. 100%, I really dived into sort of like, what is the core thing that holds me back in not just recovery, but in all aspects. And do you know what? As much as I've been able to really sort my mindset around my body and things like that, obviously recovery and your life is always just peeling away another onion. Going through the emotional release therapy, which people keep asking me to do a video on, I will, I promise. I just have to run. Yeah. In fact, it will probably be up by the time this goes out, so there we go, they can go back to that video. That you peel away another onion layer, and part of my emotional releasing is that feeling of safety, and that resonates across, like, you know, when someone just says and like unpicks something, and it literally felt as if like a whole sort of like light bomb just went across like everything and just shone everything up, that I was just like, I get it now, like in terms of like how I felt in myself, the way I controlled food, the way I like quickly split up from relationships, the way I would approach sort of like work. It's like, keep it all to myself, because safety is like the one thing that is like and I'm hugely passionate about finding those like little tiny emotions that you probably brought from childhood that have just sort of like layered on top of each other, and then they keep layering, and then now you're sort of like here in like maybe your teens or your 20s, and you've got all of these different experiences around that, or unfavorable habits that are holding you back from your life, and they've all sort of got an emotion underneath them, and like it's working through that emotion, trying to like find that, like what you were saying, stepping back and like looking and being like, okay, what's the story I'm telling myself right now?
Exactly. And what I always like to kind of describe to clients, especially when I first start working with them, is over time, and like you said, you've built this bubble around you, and it's this hard shell around you of safety behaviors, of safety thoughts and safety mindsets that are keeping you stuck in this bubble. And you're quite happy sitting there in this bubble because you're avoiding feelings of discomfort, you're avoiding feelings of fear and anxiety. But to recover, you cannot continue to live inside this bubble. So as part of recovery, what we need to start doing is we need to start making behavior changes, which are going to slowly start to pull that bubble away. And when you start to put cracks in this bubble, that's when all of those emotions are going to start to come up, and all those fears are going to start to bubble up. And that's why it's so important we do the psychological work, because you cannot break that bubble without dealing with the repercussions of the bubble breaking apart, and deal with the thoughts and deal with the emotions that are going to come up. So yeah, that's why that psychological piece is so important, and kind of practicing those thought restructuring and also distress tolerance techniques so that you can sit with the feelings of discomfort. You can change the mindsets that you've got around food in your body, and then work towards recovery.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. How would you say your life is different now? Obviously, we know you're doing dream job. If you could basically, let's give some people a reason to recover, how would you say your life is different now compared to when it was?
So so many ways. I'm living such a bigger life now. I feel like I've got a really flourishing social life, which I had deprived myself of for the majority of the first half of my 20s. So now going out to enjoy food and to enjoy wine with my friends is something that I don't even think twice about. It's like, hell yes, of course I want to go. That's a huge one. Also, my ability to function cognitively and actually apply myself to my studies is significantly improved. When I was stuck in old habits, 90% of my brain power was used up on food and exercise. And it is so freeing to have your brain power back, to be able to use for other more productive kind of lifestyle things that you want to work on to develop yourself. So kind of having brain space back in my life has been huge and significant.
And like lack of brain fog as well, like being able to concentrate, right? Like I'm doing things now that I laugh at myself, because I'm half expecting myself to be distracted, or to like not feel as though I can do it, or get distracted by my fitness power or whatever, and then I don't, and I can sit and I do something for like a good few hours, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Exactly. It's so good having that freed brain space. And then I guess the other thing is because I do work as a personal trainer, and despite my history with having a negative relationship with exercise, it's always going to be something that is really important to me. And I really enjoy training. And since recovering over time, I've slowly built up my training volume. And at the moment, my training volume is probably like I'm training the hardest I ever have in my life. And I'm still sitting on a healthy 28 to 32 day cycle every single month. So it's been able to, I think that one of the fears that a lot of women have going into HA recovery is I'll never be able to exercise hard again. That is not true. In fact, I'm exercising better and more efficiently, and I'm stronger than I ever have been because I have the benefits of having healthy hormones that are supporting my recovery and supporting my progression in the gym. So I'm actually just leaping forward in terms of my progress in the gym because everything's actually working well for me. I'm fueling correctly. It's like kind of like, how did I not expect that this would be the case? Of course it's the case, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely another added benefit of recovery.
100%. And like, I don't know about you, but like it has your approach to training changed as well. So like, rather than going in with the calorie burn, it's like, oh, I cannot get over how much stronger I'm like, I don't get me wrong, I have obviously lost strength because I took like a year out, but like the fact that I can do it and then I'm not completely done in for the rest of the day, and I'm like, this is amazing. And I go in and I get excited about lifting weights. Honestly, ask my best friend who's like really into lifting. I would have hated it previously, where I have loved it the past 8 or so weeks that I've been back. And what was I going to say with that? Oh, bummer, it's gone. Oh yeah, no, and the fact that I was focused on like the strength work, I'm looking in the mirror now and I'm like, hold up,
Hello, muscles.
yeah, like hold on, I look great. And there was definitely times in recovery that I just thought, that's it, I'm the fat friend.
Yeah, you get into like I'm now destined to be a marshmallow for the rest of my life. It's not it's
Yeah.
not the case. You
And
go
you,
through a temporary period where yes, that's the case. I want to be realistic with everyone.
yeah,
Yeah, you're going to gain weight and you're going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to feel puffy because that's part of it, but it balances out. I was so surprised at how much my body changed in the kind of 6 to 12 months post recovery and how everything just sorted itself out. And now I'm like, oh, okay.
yeah. Like recovery isn't forever, and like you will get your life back plus a hella ton more. Just
Exactly.
so if you're listening or you're watching, it's bloody worth it. I know right now you're probably going through some hard times, but it is 1,000% worth it.
I
Um,
agree.
Lucy, where can everyone find you?
Follow me on Instagram. That's the best place to find me. My handle is Lucy Ann McConnell. I'm sure that Chloe can put that in the show notes. But that's the best place to find me. And if you're interested in working with me, just flick me a DM and I'll just send you the information about the services that I offer. So I offer the one-on-one coaching. I also offer a program called Better Balance Training. So I work with women who have just recovered from HA and are ready to slowly return to the gym. So I'm using my experience as a personal trainer to do that kind of stepwise, increase in training volume to help you get back to a high level of training without going back into HA.
Love that.
And then, of course, we've got our other services like Recovery Club and our group healing HA program, which I can also give you information about. So there's plenty of different options if you did want to work with me in some capacity. But yeah, Instagram's the best way to find me.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Learning to build it up slowly, training with my cycle, been the best thing I've done. Thank you so much for joining me. Have the lovely rest of your afternoon, evening, right? Yeah, and I'm starting. It's 7:15 in the morning, so I've got the day ahead. Thank you so much, guys. As usual, please like, subscribe if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast if you're on the podcast, and if you're watching this on Instagram in some form, because I've actually managed to get my shit together and post a little bit, then make sure you like and follow Lucy. Bye.